So welcome to Glasgow Loves the U, and thanks for joining us this evening. So this evening we have Professor Quondomatteo. Professor Quondomatteo is Professor of Anatomy who studied in the University of Bari in Italy. He spent several years working in Germany. He was a senior lecturer in anatomy in NUI Galway from 2007 until 2015 when he moved to Glasgow. In 2018, he was awarded an honorary fellowship of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow. And in November 2019, he publicly announced that due to Brexit, he had made the difficult and painful decision to leave the University of Glasgow and move back to Ireland, a country in the EU. He's now working in the Department of Anatomy and Regenerative Medicine in the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin. So welcome this evening, Professor.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and this evening we'll also have Bernd who will be helping us with IT, and we'll have Paul who'll be taking your questions from social media. So first of all, Professor, welcome and thanks for talking to us this evening. And can you tell us what attracted you to Glasgow, or how you ended up in Glasgow, and how was your experience there in Glasgow?
Well, thank you very much first for inviting me. It's a pleasure. I came to Glasgow, as you said. I was senior lecturer in Galway. For me, was a great step forward in my career, and I became in charge of the anatomy facility at the University of Glasgow. It was a great opportunity, professionally speaking, initially, and one thing that reassured me was after having lived a number of years in Ireland and having been happy in Ireland for so many years, I should be happy in Glasgow too. And in fact, it was the case. The experience in Glasgow was phenomenal, was really good from under every perspective, under every point of view. I mean, professionally speaking, it was a great experience. The University of Glasgow offers a great opportunity for developing ideas, for developing, in my particular case, for developing my vision of anatomy, and also humanly. I had wonderful staff, colleagues, and the place, Glasgow, is a place I really enjoyed. The city of Glasgow, living in Glasgow, it's really difficult then and painful to make such a decision, as you mentioned correctly, and these were the words that I used when I announced it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what was your reasoning then behind your decision to leave?
Essentially, as I was saying, I lived a happy life, both professionally and personally in Glasgow, and the work was very successful too. So, but at the same time, obviously, when I moved to Glasgow, my family kept living in Galway, and I was split between the two, and then and ultimately the idea was to move the center of gravity of the family into Glasgow, and then the Brexit referendum came just a few months after I moved, because I moved in, as you rightly pointed out, I stayed up to 2015 in Galway, and then from January 2016 I moved to Glasgow. And yeah, a few months later the referendum came, and things changed, because obviously the whole scenario, the whole future prospect of being a European citizen in the UK was different, and a lot of other things had to be considered before making a decision like that. Yeah, so the bottom line is that after a few years, I got this opportunity to move back to Ireland and to the EU, which I took, and I think it was the right decision, despite the fact that it was very difficult to make. And fundamentally, it goes down to the fact that planning a future in the uncertainty of whatever life could be, is essentially what created the biggest difficulty, I think. I'd like to say that in my head, there had been two types of Brexit, or there are two types of Brexit. There's the social Brexit, so the Brexit in the people, in the society, in the shops, in the streets, and in the pubs, and at work. And this is not in Glasgow, so that isn't the problem. And there was by no means I had any time, or I'd never had the sensation or the impression to be unwelcome in the city or at work, and that is something I'm very, very vocal on. Glasgow is a brilliant place, and it's a very welcoming place, and like the whole of Scotland, also expressed itself mainly for Remain. And then there is the political Brexit. That is what effectively created the difficulties, and obviously it's not having a visa or not, because as a university professor it's probably not that difficult, but all the rest which is around, and how life, say for example access to NHS was a problem, the ability of, for example, also receiving family visits, and I've got children who are grown up, they would have stayed back to Ireland. There would have been a political barrier between me and them. And the idea of having me visiting without having to convince someone that they were not coming to look for a job or something like that, all these kind of things, I think they made me think that life is going to be more complicated. So the decision of moving the center of gravity to Scotland was reconsidered. And when the opportunity arose for me to move back to Ireland, that's what happened. And as I said, I was terribly lucky that I've got this opportunity, because the place I'm working now is great, and also the environment. So this is how, in essence, the reasons that were behind that.
Yeah, it's really such a sad situation, because you really enjoyed your time in Glasgow. Yeah, so you mentioned there your children. So do you think, like, what were like your concerns specifically about maybe their future, in the UK, that maybe opportunities that they wouldn't have?
Well, to be honest, as I mentioned, they are grown up. So the idea for them to grow in the UK was not part of the mix. Certainly, a person with a family, with a younger family, might have to consider that as well. And to be honest, this is a question that I can't answer. I don't know what the situation would be, what the situation may be, for example, for European citizens to have access to schools, or what type of priority list or something like that. This is something that is not. But the problem was that, I think, and talking about the political aspect of Brexit, is that the message that was constantly given was not a friendly message. And that is what obviously poisoned the atmosphere quite a lot and made people think, well, maybe the government doesn't want us here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. And I was saying, so essentially, that is it. That there are some iconic or famous statement like "citizens of nowhere" or "European have used this place as if it was their home for too long," which are words that, when they are said by the people who run the government, obviously they do matter, and they make you think, okay, maybe it's not really the right place to be.
Yeah, I understand.
I think that played a role as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you announced it then on social media, and like, what made you decide to do that? And then what was the reaction that you got?
Well, we write on social media what happens in our life, right? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to publicly, in particular, thank the University of Glasgow for the opportunity that I got. Well, the reaction was mixed reaction. Obviously, there were a lot of likes, response, and certainly most of the people, vast majority of the people, some people were surprised. Some people sent a lot of positive message to me and effectively saying that I will be missed and so on and so forth. And Glasgow loves the you sent a very nice message as well, and as well as many other colleagues and so on.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good that you had such a good reaction.
Yes, I have to say, yeah, it was all, I think, all genuine, because I mean, my love for Glasgow and my life in Glasgow at work and in general was very genuine. It's still very genuine. So I think it was a very genuine relation there.
Oh, that's nice. That's good. Anyway, something positive came out of it. Yeah. So do you think that like your European identity is kind of important to you, or can you talk us through that?
Yes, absolutely. I think, well, you can see already in my Twitter account, it says I'm a European, and it is very important to me. And that's what I feel myself. I was born in Italy. I was raised in Italy. I studied in Italy. But then I lived in Germany many years, where I essentially learned the job of being an anatomist. I lived in Ireland. I lived in Scotland. Now I live in Ireland again. And for me, the essence of everything is to live in my country, which I consider the European Union, and to live as a citizen that doesn't have to ask for a visa or permission to anyone else to live there. And that was part of the decision then, again, to leave Scotland, because obviously this kind of situation was missing. Things had changed, obviously, and the whole situation was different then all of a sudden. So that's for me, being European, being in Europe, feeling as a part of it. And there's a lot of misinformation about the European Union. People just think of the trade, think of the contribution. What I write often on Twitter is that the European Union is not a cash cow. It's not there just to dispense money. The European Union is an idea of solidarity. And let's face, it brings peace as well. It has brought peace for many, many years in Europe, and it brings people to grow together without losing their identity. I am Italian. I will always be Italian. I've got the privilege to live a bit of my life in Germany, in Ireland, and in Scotland. So to take the best of everything and put it together, if you wish. But the bottom line is that without losing your original identity, you can be European.
Of course, yeah. Of course, there's a whole like cultural side of being European as well.
Yeah,
that's like rarely talked about. Yeah. So that's interesting. We'll see if there's any questions on social media. Is there, Paul?
Not yet, but I just wanted to ask. There's a famous quote by George Steiner that says that trees have roots, but men have legs, which is a celebration essentially of freedom of movement, cultures mixing together. And I guess that goes directly against Theresa May's quote about citizens of nowhere. I just wonder if you had any view as to why these attitudes come about, why we don't seem to value those freedoms enough in the UK.
Well, to be honest, I think that a lot of it has been misinformation from a lot of people to a lot of people, and you shouldn't say we don't seem to value freedom of movement, because I know that you do value it. But the thing is that I think misinformation played a central role, and a lot of people were then surprised to see how many things are going to change in that respect that they didn't expect, because they weren't told that. So I think yes, misinformation is at the base of everything, which I don't think it's a valid excuse, to be honest, because nowadays we're all grown up people, and with all the means of communication, I think to make a little bit of research and try to find out the reality behind things is not that difficult. It's not so difficult as it was probably 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah. And speaking of research, so in terms of your work then, do you think that Brexit has made research more difficult and say my collaboration maybe on projects, you know, across Europe?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think I don't know because I'm not following particularly what's happening in the UK at the moment at this level, but certainly it makes communication more complicated and it makes traveling more complicated. And let's not forget that we are evaluating Brexit now with COVID on top of it. So I think in order to answer this particular question, I think it would be probably better to wait after the pandemic is finished and to see. But there are conversations, as far as I know, but going on about participation of the UK in the big grand schemes of the European Union. But as I said, I'm not following it, so I can't answer this question.
And do you think that maybe universities in the UK, they might have issues maybe recruiting people? As obviously yourself, like you left. And do you think there might be issues with maybe visas going forward?
It's probably not the visa aspect in that essentially if somebody will be recruited from abroad, I think that the visa bits are going to be relatively straightforward, and the universities, I'm sure they will help and they will assist for all the practicalities of it. The question that will be interesting to see is how much people are willing to move into this changed reality, and that affects presumably only EU27 citizens that for whom actually the change has happened. But then again, the problem of COVID is overlapping onto that, and therefore it is difficult to see whether recruitment has been impaired now due to COVID or due to Brexit, or whether it has been impaired at all. So I think it's too early to. But certainly, I'm sure there will be people that will make considerations. And one important thing is that I said at the beginning. I want to say at the beginning, it's not about the essence of my conversation with you, as I was mentioning before. It's not about Brexit is good or bad, or was it the right thing to do? Was it not the right thing to do that the UK left the European Union? It's about the impact on people, and every person has got their own circumstances and their own personal context, and so it has to be put in that personal and also temporal context. So time will tell.
And are you aware of any issues with, say, recognition of mutual recognition of qualifications, like any difficulties in that area, like between the UK and, say, other EU countries?
That is a very good question, and we will see, because at the moment we didn't have that, and it was taken for granted. I can tell you only what the fact is that if I'm medically qualified, and I did my qualification in Italy, and when you do the qualification in medicine, you do the qualification, you get your title, your medical title and your medical degree, but you also have to do on top professional qualification, which I did in Italy. If I wanted to go and practice in the US, for example, I didn't. The medical degree would have been recognized, but then you had to do the state exam effectively, and every country has got its own way of doing this state examination for giving you the license to practice. Previously, or up to now in the European Union. So I mean, I've got the license from Italy, and when I went to Germany, I translated my Italian into the German one. So there was an official path of recognition, but I got the German thing. I could have done the same with Ireland, which I hadn't done because I'm not practicing as an anatomist anyway. So. And I don't know now what happens, whether there will be some kind of mutual agreement, or if it goes like in the US, for example, presumably medically qualified people or other qualifications will have to do some kind of additional type of recognition, vice versa.
Yeah.
That's what normally happens. I don't know what the case of UK and EU will be.
Okay,
so up to now there was a full equivalence. I mean, it's not automatic. You had to make your qualification become validated, but it was effectively a bureaucratic step. You didn't have to take additional exams or things like that.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that maybe Dublin would be more attractive then for students in that way, because maybe the qualification would, would be easier to travel with it, work abroad?
Well, I mean, there's a lot said about it, how much Ireland will benefit from that. Again, I think it's very early. It's very early to draw conclusions. And again, I'm sorry I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the COVID doesn't help in looking at these things.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay, that's interesting. Just see if there's any more questions in from social media, is there?
Not yet.
No. Okay, no worries. We'll just keep going with the chat then. Do you think that the general public in the UK, maybe before the referendum, they may be confused and conflated maybe freedom of movement with the asylum system? Obviously, they're two completely different systems. Do you think maybe that's where part of the hostility maybe came from?
Possibly, and certainly it goes down to the misinformation that was done.
Yeah.
But again, it's difficult to say it, especially from my side. But that could probably be one aspect. Yeah.
And how are things then in general in Dublin at the moment? Like there was a lot of concerns, before the referendum or before Brexit, that it would be severely affected in many ways. And do you think that the Republic is then it's kind of surviving, it's getting by, or how are things there?
Well, there's one topic which is particularly hot is obviously is what's happening in the north, and which is very sad to see that. So hopefully things will pan out pacifically and peacefully very soon. But apart from that, there doesn't seem to be a huge impact. It's not that the shelves of the supermarket are empty in Ireland. That's not the case, certainly. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, that's good to hear. And do you see any kind of similarities then between Dublin and Glasgow, maybe in the sense of kind of maybe they're like, Celtic nations, or maybe they're European in kind of outlook? Or
well, I'm sure there are, but it's difficult to see them at the moment. If you spend your life between a flat and the office, and can't go and see real life, because obviously it's difficult to compare. I spent my days in Glasgow, enjoying also the life in Glasgow and what all it offers, and the joviality of people, and etc. And at the moment, there's very little social life, obviously due to the pandemic. So, but I'm sure it will be very similar in terms of ability to enjoy life and to have attractions, as you said. The heritage is very similar from, and that was a bit of my point at the very beginning when I said, if I have been happy for so many years in Ireland, I'm sure we'll be in Glasgow. And in fact, it was the case,
Yeah. I think we have just one question in from social media.
Yeah, just one question from Dee about asking about what is the situation with learning foreign languages in Italy, Because obviously in the UK, because English is so dominant, we're not very good at this, and probably becoming worse in some senses. Yeah. So just what's the situation with that, and do you think that helps contribute to this kind of more European way, more open-minded view of the world?
Yeah. I don't know now, but certainly, I mean, people of my generation, and I can reveal my age, I'm 54. So back in the 70s and 80s, I was in school. You learned English or French or German as a foreign language, right? But one foreign language. And it was a very school-driven type of learning. There was no real... I think the English that I learned it through the music and being on the road. Fawlty Towers played an immense role as well, but and also traveling. So people in my generation, it's not so common to find, unless they've been abroad. It's not so common to find that they would speak more than one language. And I don't know how it is now, but there's certainly much more awareness of that with one or maybe also two foreign languages in school. But Italians are also traditionally not tremendously well known for being polyglot. They learn English because they have to do it in school, and for whatever very basic English is needed to travel. And certainly people of generations older than me do not regularly speak a second language. Yeah.
Right. It's really interesting. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. It was really interesting to hear your story, and really sorry that kind of decision was like forced on you, but I'm sure there are plenty of other people who are having to make similar decisions. But just speaking as a Dubliner, I just hope that you enjoy your time in Dublin.
Certainly. Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting me. And it's always great to be connected with Glasgow one way or the other.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye-bye.